The world's most ridiculous intro on the world's most ridiculous horse racing podcast. Welcome in Horse Racing Happy Hour. I'm Louie Rabeau, solo tonight, hanging out with you, Mike Gandolfo, somewhere in the woods of Wisconsin. My guess, they don't care for Italians where he is, and he's not ever coming back. So that's probably what's going to happen here. We bring you in on this episode ahead of the Haskell, of course, and opening day at Del Mar tomorrow. So a lot going on actually in the horse racing world, given that it is mid-late July. We'll be joined today by TK Kuegler from Wasabi Ventures, from Wasabi Stables, of course, on the horse racing side. And then we'll have our guy, Brian Skirka, stop by again from Monmouth Park. We'll talk all things Haskell, United Nations, Monmouth Cup, etc. going on there, and how I would bet the sequence, all of those sorts of things. But we'll start, as we always do, we'll go back to those replays that we had last week at Saratoga is where we went last week for all of the happenings. Casa Creed does win that. Kelso was a horse that we talked about on the show. Zach, producer Zach, hanging out, of course, with us tonight, that I thought was really well placed to get back into this kind of win at a place like Saratoga in graded company with other quality horses in this field, frankly. Thought the second start here back in North America after running in the Arabian Peninsula would get him into that good spot. So let's go ahead, Zach. Go ahead and play the replay for me here if you've got it ready. This is last week. We're looking here at Casa Creed in the
Annapolis will go even wider. White cap far outside as the field turns for home. It's still Big Everest clinging to a narrow lead. Casa Creed right to him on the inside. English B. Farther back, Annapolis has a lot of work to do. Casa Creed, a 2-length lead coming to the 16th pole. Annapolis finding his best stride, but it's Casa Creed. Casa Creed, what a classy individual.
So able to come back after running in that Japer at 6 furlongs at Belmont behind, of course, Caravel. No shame in that. Comes back, stretches back out, does a great job there. Great ride, great trip as well. Talk about these older geldings that are still running along, doing the thing. On the show, we remind you, fall in love with the fillies. They run longer, but you can always fall in love with those turf geldings who seem to run forever. And Zach, I'm seeing someone's knocking on the door here, so let's let him in. Maybe he wants to watch a replay with us. Oh, there he is. There's TK. Hey, buddy, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you, Louie?
Long time coming that we get to hang out, and so thanks for joining us here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. You can find you at TK. Did I pronounce your name properly, Kuegler?
You crushed it.
How about that? I'm living a whole life of crushing things, TK. It's just
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So good to have you in. You are on all different sides of the horse racing spectrum here. You are a pick 5 monster, but also love the ownership side of things. We'll get into that with you later on in our Horse Racing 101 segment presented by our friends at the Maryland Thoroughbred Breeders Association. But Casa Creed there, man. Sometimes we get those older geldings that just they pick off those races at the longer turf distances.
That's unbelievable, right? I mean, that's the beauty. That's often, there's two things there. You talked about the gelding aspect of it, but there's also the turf aspect of it too, right?
Right.
I mean, all you got to do is look at Europe, and it's not unusual to see a 7 and 8 year old running 2.5 miles somewhere in Europe. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, his last race was at 3 miles and 3/4 in France, and now he's running in Ireland at 2.5 miles.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
He's using his speed in the cutback, because that's what it is. So
he last ran during the Ford administration. Yeah, exactly.
You're right.
So we did see a massive upset, TK, last week, and I'd love to get your thoughts on how you play 2-year-old races, because we are in 2-year-old season now as we get into the summer fall here. So Yo-Yo Candy, Zach, let's pull up the Sanford win here for Yo-Yo Candy. Finished behind the favorite the previous time out at Belmont by 10 lengths. Excuse me. Turns the tables here in the Sanford at Saratoga.
9 lengths to make up, 4 lengths clear of his rights. They pass the quarter pole and turn for home, and Market Street on the outside challenging as Yo-Yo Candy is rallying. Dickens along the inside. They're a furlong from the finish. Gold Sweep still has plenty of work to do, but he's starting to make up ground alongside Triple Tray. 16th pole, Yo-Yo Candy with a 2.5 length lead, and Yo-Yo Candy has won the Sanford.
So we see this at this time of year, as I mentioned, TK, we see these horses growing up right in front of us. Another time that I always think of when we get to watch these horses grow up is going from those October, November high-level juvenile races into that hard, set up Derby prep schedule, essentially, where we see those horses become, the great 3-year-olds that they can become, or maybe they were great as 2-year-olds, essentially really great at basketball at 8th and 9th grade, but they get to their junior, senior year of high school and they're just not as good, right? Maybe they were taller when they were younger, whatever it might be. Yo-Yo Candy obviously had tried it at Belmont previously, loses by a double-digit lengths last time. How would someone have seen this horse last time out?
Well, it depends on how you bet, right? A little bit, because you mentioned I'm a pick 5 guy, so I'm playing a lot of horizontals. So if you look at the sequence there and how you think about the sequence, when you see a 2-year-old race, anything can happen. Just it doesn't matter. And if you watch that race and you watch the replay just now, the heavy favorite is probably the best horse in the group, right? Just how it finishes, it breaks badly, it gets everything that goes wrong. Well, that's what happens in 2-year-old races, right? I mean, that's just the nature of, especially at a place like Saratoga, where everybody's gearing to go run, right? So you're just, so you could even have a first-time starter in a race like that could have jumped up and won, and you wouldn't know very little about the horse. So,
and we saw that on Friday, by the way, on opening day in the debutante, right? So I mean, there was 100% on the Philly side,
yeah, and so so you, as a horizontal player, I'm looking for a big price in a race like that. I'm going to go skinny somewhere else, really skinny, singling. I'm going to try to find a single when I see a race like this in the sequence, hoping that happens. Now, I can tell you, I didn't hit the pick 5 in this case, but I had Yo-Yo Candy in my pick 5. Why? Because I was very wide there. Just as a personal thing, the owners of Yo-Yo Candy, great people. They had the box next to us at Tampa. So super nice people. So it's always nice to see operations like that get a nice big win. So, but yeah, it was, in my mind, when you see a race like that, or you see another one that at Saratoga to think about that's very similar is state bred bred races, because you got all kinds of weird stuff happening, right? I hit the pick 5 yesterday, the late pick 5 at Saratoga yesterday, and it ended with a state bred race.
Yes, right.
And
New York Selling Series.
Exactly. And so, and it was a little bit of a price that got home, but I was so wide, it wasn't like I was a genius and I knew that horse was going to get there. It's because I had already hit 2 singles to get there.
Oh, nice. Okay, there you go. So that's some good advice. I agree. By the way, on the 2-year-old thing, especially expecting a 2-year-old horse to have back-to-back great races with no issues is just unrealistic. I mean, and you're in ownership, and we'll get to this. The fact that any horse ever gets to the starting gate to me is still a remarkable accomplishment of man's desire to have a horse race. And so, Zach, let's go ahead. We'll get to that final race that was there on Saturday at Saratoga. Of course, the Grade 1 Diana, the Chad Brown Invitational. We got the Grade 3 winner in White Beam jumping up in a very competitive end of this race.
Gather some momentum now within 4 of the lead, as In Italian now has to fend off White Beam, 111-4 for 6 furlongs there at the top of the stretch. White Beam firing a big shot on the outside of In Italian. In Italian a length. White Beam on the outside, market segmentation, trying to get by Fev Rover for 3rd. Coming to the 16th pole, In Italian set down. White Beam trying to get her. In Italian ahead, White Beam. Big effort from Fev Rover. In Italian, White Beam, a final try. White Beam in Italian in a photo finish. And
still getting used to Frank Miramati, but the incredible splits there, by the way. We're 135.5 essentially at the mile there. So they're flying. I mean, In Italian was absolutely flying. I think if you look at her at the end there, you think she's slowing down, but really she's done all the work. She's got a huge pace there. We get White Beam at the end. We're seeing Flavian Pratt prove that he is really one of these absolutely elite riders. In the stretch, you get a full example of that. I will be very honest. This was a race that I did not bet because I thought this kind of outcome was possible. I just didn't know which one of the other 4 horses might hit.
100%. 100%. It's a race like that. You have 2 choices. You take a stand with one horse,
sure,
or you or don't play it, in my opinion. So those are your 2 choices when you have a field like that and a situation like that. If you say I'm going to play it, take a stand with something, and and you got to, and you can't take away anything from In Italian. I thought In Italian ran a great race, right?
She was
you know,
great.
but that's
Yep.
that's what makes this game wild as a bettor, right? You can have, if you had an Italian there and you're like, boy, the horse ran great. I knew the horse was going to run great, and it still wasn't enough. You know, you still go throw away all the tickets if you don't have it.
So Chad Brown has now won 77 straight renditions of that race. So congratulations to him. Or was it?
I'm sure he's very proud of that too.
Yeah. We were interviewing Brad Cox a couple Fridays ago ahead of the Indiana Derby, and we said, "Hey, if you win the Indiana Derby, what are you going to do?" And he said, "I don't know, get in my car, go home, and go to bed."
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. That must be nice. Win a grade 3 and with one of your 3-year-olds, and just go ahead and drive home and watch workouts the next day.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Just of those 3 races, who do you think's the most likely to bounce back and have another good race?
Ugh.
Between Casa Creed, Yo-Yo Candy,
yeah,
and
I'm gonna say Casa Creed because
Okay.
I just think Casa Creed is a little bit depends on where it goes and whatnot. But I would say if I had to pick one of those 3, I'm taking Casa Creed.
I'll take White Beam here just because I think a little bit more experience in the Chad Brown, whatever is going on up there in New York with the turf training. It's a little more time in his barn. I think she'll really appreciate it. And I think that she's the kind of horse, especially if she can keep getting a Flavian Pratt or whatever super high level mount she's going to get. I think it's a chance that she ends up picking off another major race before the end of the year. And of course, we have TK in. He is our guest for Racing 101 with the Maryland Breeders. And of course, hey, this Sunday, the Maryland Horse Breeders Association, they're going to host their 89th annual yearling show live from the Maryland State Fairgrounds at Timonium, a place I haven't been on my bucket list. Tune in as some of Maryland's future stars. They're going to be showcased and judged by longtime trainer Ned Allard, and all of the winners will receive cash prizes. That show starts at 9 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday. Tune in at facebook.com/Maryland Thoroughbreds. So go ahead and check them out. Great partners of ours, TK. I know you have a large ensemble of horses in the state of Maryland. How many do you have currently in Maryland?
We 26 brood mares right now. So then you start throwing in the yearlings, and it is our base of breeding operations. So I think we're easily one of the 2 or 3 largest breeders, sort of in Maryland.
And we've been hanging out with them. But, we try to do the Preakness as often as we can. It seems to, TK, coincide with my kids' first communions, unfortunately, because they try to avoid the Derby here, right? So they're like, 2 weeks after Derby, we'll have first communion. I'm like, can we do it 3 weeks after Derby? Is that the thing we can do? I love my family, but what are we doing?
Do they not understand that's a dark weekend? That's a dark
Come
weekend.
on, guys. Can't do that to me. And so we were there this year. It was actually Gandolfo's first trip. And I think we had properly prepped him for Pimlico, which was, it's not Churchill Downs. And so it's okay, by the way. You're going to have a great time. People are in a terrific mood. It costs something in the magnitude of 90% less than going to the Derby. And so there's going to be a lot younger people. The crowd, that's the thing that Zach and I noticed this year is, they've really stretched out that Derby weekend at Churchill from just being on Saturday. When I moved here 15 years ago, you could go to Oaks for $60-$70, go sit in the grandstand, have fun with your buddies and whatever else. And now it's all grouped together and all those kinds of things. They pushed a lot of that crowd. They had like 56,000 people on the Thursday before Derby. And that crowd was very young. It was very interesting to watch. And everyone was dressed like they were going to the Derby, but that was their Derby day, was that Thursday, because you could go for $50, $60, $70. And so we've watched that change. But the Preakness still has some of that feel where you get the younger crowd, but you still get, man, I have a selfie on Twitter I put up. I think the guy's been to 41 straight Preaknesses, that kind of thing. And so Maryland has its own thing, but there's a lot of pride. And what I like, TK, that I've noticed is their progression of how they build their series up to the Tessio and then up to the Preakness. It's so logical. It's 7 furlongs. And then at Laurel, you have the 1 turn, 8 furlong, or then you go 9, and then the Tessio's 9, and then you run the Preakness. I mean, all of them make sense, and there's so much logic to it. It's also a really good state bred program there. Have you benefited from it?
Very, very much. Like I said, we're a pretty. We may even be the largest breeder in the state of Maryland. I'm not sure, but we're pretty close. We're in the fighting distance of it. So, I had a horse win the other day where we got a state bred breeder bonus. We sold the horse. It's been gone for a year and a half. But
oh wow,
because you're going to get 30%, right? You're going to wind up getting your 30% as a breeder.
Wow.
And without any bills, which is, you can't hate that as well.
Yeah. So this is Horse Racing 101, and we've had on, we've asked different people. So our first Our first was Jenna Antonucci. So no pressure.
No pressure.
Follow Jenna Antonucci. And then Dan Illman, of course, we asked him, if somebody wanted to be a DRF guy, if they wanted to be a public handicapper for a living, how would they go do that? What does your day look like, Dan? We asked him about that. You do a lot of different things, and I know that horse racing ownership is not, maybe it's becoming your number one, I don't know, but it isn't how you started, at least in business. What is your approach to horse racing ownership? Do you do, because if people were looking at Wasabi from the outside in, what should they know about it?
Yeah, I think I'll do two pieces there because it's a one-on-one piece. So, without being much of a plug, our approach is a little different than probably anybody else. When I started off in this, I had the dream of building more owners. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to educate people to be good owners, and then they could go off and be owners on their own. They don't have to stay with us. That was the dream. And so, to do good education, we spend a lot of time as a community. We have an incredibly, about 1,400 people actively talking to each other all day, every day.
Cool.
We have a platform where people can sit there and talk all day about all kinds of things, from wine and food to, horse racing and handicapping and you name it. But sprinkled in there is a lot of education. And I think it would be, if you think about like how they treat ownership in Europe, you actually have to take some and get some education before you can get a license. You have to prove that you can pay for the horse that you're buying, that you can support it. These are all things that I think make a good. Now, it's hard to do that in the way things are regulated here, but it would be interesting. And so what I did with Wasabi was, let's do that education and let some people go off. And sort of how we do that is I do it. We're probably the only syndicate in the world that does this. But if you buy into a horse that we claim and you buy your 1%, you're basically paying what we paid for the horse, the 1%, and you have no ongoing bills and no risk of loss.
Okay.
So if the horse loses money, it's on me. You're not paying any ongoing bills. I just do it so that there's that education piece. And I think not everybody can do that. But we do. And, and the last piece I would say, bringing it back to sort of ownership 101 is that I would strongly urge anyone, before you jump in and say, hey, I want to buy it and run my own horse, simulate it. Go ahead and pick a horse that's already been running. Pick it at random, any horse in the program. Don't pick the one that looks the best. Just pick a horse in random in the program and figure out what the expenses were and what the revenues were for, let's say, a year or 2 years or some period of time, and do the math on it. And then you'll quickly realize that it's probably lost money if you did it right. And if you lost money, could you afford to lose that money?
Right.
Because that's one of the key things that I think people, it's most of the time guys with egos. They jump in, they go to a sale, they buy whatever expensive 2-year-old they're told that they should buy, and the horse can't run. And lo and behold, now they're way underwater, and this game's crooked, and I don't want to be a part of it. Well, if they had got a little of that education and taken the time to do what I just described, they may not have that feeling.
What's more exciting, hitting the pick 5 or a random horse you claim picking off a low-level claimer at Laurel?
Oh, it's just totally winning a race, right? There's nothing like, and I love the claiming game. We're big into breeding, and so we race to breed, breed to race and all of that, and that's wonderful. And that's got its own thrills, that you have a horse that you breed and then it runs and it wins and all of that fun stuff. That's a great joy too, but it's a different joy. But the idea that you can claim a $25,000 horse at Tampa, who now probably ran the fastest buyer's figure last week in the country, that means you did something right when you claim it as a 25K maiden a year ago and ran in the Haskell. We're going to talk about the Haskell a little here. That was a 25K claimer we picked and was in the lead of the Haskell as it turned for home. So, there's a pretty big thrill in that.
How did you get into horse ownership? When did you see your first horse race? Are you one of these guys, same last name as someone else, like everyone in horse racing, or are you like me?
Close, but not quite. So close. My great grandfather was a trainer.
Oh, wow.
And so I fell in love, and he lived to be like 95 years old. So
Oh, cool. Okay.
I got to hear all his stories, and no one between him and myself had anything to do with horse racing in the family, right? So
Interesting.
they all fell out of it. Just and so I promised myself when I had made enough money in my life, I would go off and start a racing. I'd start a stable. I'd start a racing stable, and the deal with my wife, this is true family lore here. This is, and it's very true, was that we have 4 children, and I could not start the racing stable until the youngest graduated.
Oh,
Because
okay.
if we were going to travel around, my wife wanted to go with her, and she didn't want to just sit at home while I'm off at Santa Anita watching some
Yeah,
horse
right.
run,
Yeah.
right? So that was the deal, and the family lore, which is almost exactly true, as my youngest daughter is walking across the stage, I'm claiming a horse, and all that's close to true. It's might be a little apocryphal, but it's not too far from the truth.
Owning horses and having an operation means you have to trust a lot of people.
Yeah.
Who is it in the industry that you think you have to trust the most? Is it a breeder? Is it a bloodstock agent? Is it a trainer? Who's the person that you're trusting the most here?
I think it's both. And what I did was I basically, in both of those cases, like a bloodstock for the bloodstock agent and the trainer, in both cases, I basically made them employees. So I took
Yeah, sure.
them over and made it private, and that was just like employing anyone else in some ways. You bring them in, and so Jesse Cruz is our primary trainer.
Yep.
We use a couple others, but Jesse Cruz is, and he and I have been together 4 years now, and we spent a lot of time together, and it's like any other employee, right? I got a couple other 100 other employees in other businesses. It's like anything else. You learn to trust them, and you learn how they work and what they do well and don't do well, and help them where you can. And the same thing, I have George Adams on the bloodstock side. Really runs a lot of our breeding operation, and but that took a lot of trust, to your point, and a lot of conversations and observing and all of the things you would do with your hire. That's one of the crazy things, like Louie, in this game, is so many owners come in and they just start firing away, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like
The Jerry Jones approach, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah,
interview
right.
anyone? Did you
Right.
did you actually spend time with the trainer? Did you watch their operation? Did you go in the morning and just observe how they treat their own employees? All these kind of things. And and most of the time they're like, no, I had no idea. I just picked one up. I saw he was there. He was drinking, and I like to drink. So next thing you know, he's my trainer. I'm like, well, that's fantastic. I said, is that how you? And most people come into this business, right? We're successful in something else, right?
Sure.
It's not right. If they're an owner in this game, they were doing something else first. And it's amazing to me. They come in here and they lose all of their business sense.
Right.
It's like you hired someone to run, and in some cases, multi-million-dollar business for you, and you did that because they're good, they're fun people to be around. Well, you wouldn't do that with any other business. Why would you do that here?
Interesting. All right. Well, we're going to look at a sequence at Monmouth this weekend, TK, that is an all stakes pick 5.
I'm ready.
TK plays lots of pick 5s. Is your preference a claimer and allowance kind of pick 5, a mix of stakes and allowance of claimers, or an all stakes pick 5? What's your preference?
I think it depends on what the sequence, where the sequence is. And what I mean by that is, if you're playing like an all stakes sequence at where the handle is going to be really, really large, then that's great, because then you've got a chance, even if it's a little chalky and you hit one bomb, that you could still get a nice payoff. If it's a normal everyday pick 5 sequence, then I'm going to want something somewhere in there where the crowd is not picking what I'm picking, and I'm going to have maybe 2 races where I'm going against the crowd to get the payoffs that I'm looking for. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think it depends. It depends. I think it's easier in some ways to handicap a stakes pick five,
I agree.
right? Because you you're dealing with better horses, right? When you deal with a $5,000
and usually more consistent horses. Consistency, 100%. I think, is really the toughest part. Yeah.
A $5,000 claimer at the bottom at most tracks, or whatever the bottom claimer is at the track, at any given week, right, any of those could be not running well, and you won't know it until it's too late.
Yeah, whenever I hear at Horseshoe Indianapolis, for example, where we do a lot of work, that it's a state bred race and it's a, it's a 12-5 claimer, I go, okay, how many can I grab? Because it's going to be, I mean, they run every 2.5 weeks, and they just trade wins, and it is what it is. And my favorite, though, I think for sure, is that Assiniboia Downs. There's a condition called Manitoba, Saskatchewan, North Dakota, South Dakota bred, and I think. Not even close. That's the best condition in horse racing. I don't think it's close.
No, you absolutely could.
Manitoba, Saskatchewan, North Dakota, South Dakota. I think it tickles me, TK. It's what it does. All right, so we will go to Monmouth. Did you get a chance to look at the Oaks on Saturday at Saratoga by chance?
I did, but only in passing. But I definitely.
I mean, we see the return of Wet Paint. Sacred Wish is here. She's an interesting horse to me. Gambling Girl's in this spot. She almost picked off the Kentucky Oaks this year. In that Pretty Mischievous, and Gambling Girl 1-2. We've obviously seen Pretty Mischievous back that up with a great comeback in the Acorn. So she showed that she belonged every bit of 10-1 and more on Oaks Day. Reminded me a little. Frankly, one of the first Oaks that Mike and I worked together, I think it was in 2019, was when Serengeti Empress won. And she was the horse that when we saw her in the mornings, we went, oh, whose colt is that? And then we found out it was Serengeti Empress. And she's just jogging by, and I'm like, good God, I'm betting on that. And then we watched the number tick up, and she got the 13-1. She's in the lead on the first turn in the Oaks, and I'm thinking, oh, it's too soon. Here it is. Okay, never mind. Terrible choice. And she just gallops home beautifully. That's kind of what Pretty Mischievous it feels like this year. She's really, shown that she belongs in that group. But we also get Hoosier Philly, who came back in that Monomoy Girl over that 1 mile kind of 1.5 turn thing at Ellis Park. Interesting race here. I'm not sure it's a grade 1 field, but it's at least an interesting race. Do you have a favorite here, TK?
Well, I've got a rooting favorite. I'll say that. Wet Paint. We have a broodmare that is very closely related to Wet Paint. So it's always nice because that makes our broodmare go up in value. So just like we root for Disarm because we have a broodmare that's a foal to disarm. So so you always root for that. But from a handicapping standpoint, I think you're spot on. Honestly, I think you're going to see. I think this is a pretty wide open race because you can make a case for 4 or 5 of them.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I think that's always a good, especially younger horses. Again, anything could happen a little bit there. And but I think this could go any. I'm going to be rooting for Wet Paint, so it's always hard not to. It's not because that's going to line my pocket more than probably if I hit the pick 5, candidly. So,
okay, got it. All right. Well, you get Flavien Prat at Saratoga, which lately has been a very good idea to choose. So, I am really interested at the amount of time off that they've given to Gambling Girl. I think that there's a very clear path where this may be a warm up for the Alabama. I'm not sure, but Pletcher, I've praised on this show many times. I think places his horses as well as anyone. I don't know that Hoosier Philly is good outside the state of Kentucky. She was fine in the Black Eyed Susan. I thought she ran a fine race. But I really do wonder if she's a little more captive to running good races in Kentucky. But yeah, I it is a lazy man's take on that race. I don't know that I'm touching that one. Producer Zach will tell you, I loved Wet Paint. I mean, starting in the Martha Washington, we leaned on her very heavy, and then she let me down big time in the Kentucky Oaks. She got a terrible ride from Flavien Prat. in the Oaks, which was really disappointing. But, when you finish fourth by 3 lengths in a major race like that, I usually don't hold it against 3-year-old horses. So she's definitely got a shot on Saturday. Zach, go ahead and pop on the screen for me. I want to make sure that is Brian here, man? If he is, let's get him in here.
I'm
there
here.
he is.
Let's go.
Get a Brian sighting.
How about that? I have no idea who knows who here. But Zach, let's go ahead. We'll take those logos off the screen so I can see TK's beautiful face as we get into the handicapping here. Brian Skirka joins us from Monmouth Park. He is not from Louisville, as we learned last time. He was very offended that I would ever even ask if he was from Louisville, and so we will make sure not to do that today. Brian, how are you, man? You doing all right?
I'm doing great. I decided to give you a hiccup, and I'm back again, but proud New Jersey in here.
There it is. All right, a little New Jersey on a Thursday. His name's Brian Skirka, excuse me. Find all their stuff this weekend. Really excited for them. One of my very favorite days of the year, and I actually might like the United Nations race more than I like the Haskell, but no one needs to know that. Luckily, I didn't say that out loud on a podcast. All right, so not on the show sheet, but the matchmaker is race 5. Why is the matchmaker race 5 and not race 9? Brian, go.
Line. Line.
Actually, no, it makes sense in here because it actually gets a sprint into that pick 5 sequence, which is very helpful actually later on. Brian was nice enough actually to send me, TK, the takeout rates at Monmouth Park. Sometimes takeout rates a little hard to find. Cool thing at Monmouth, pick 4s, pick 5s, both 15%, very playable. So if you are playing a longer wager this week and at Monmouth, or maybe wanted to play a couple different tickets and press a couple different ways depending on who you like and who you don't, very playable. And that matchmaker will end the early pick 5, which starts in race 1, gives you an opportunity between some maiden special weights, some optional claimers, and of course that grade 3 in race 5 as well. So Brian will go to race 8, though, the Monmouth Cup here. You were on last month with us, a little bit of a preview ahead of some of these races. We're seeing some of those horses that we did see last month who ran those really good races. We're going for $400,000 here, mile and an eighth on the dirt. This is for 3-year-olds, and up in the Monmouth Cup, this is essentially the older horse version of the Haskell. Brian, pretty prestigious race here. We see Proxy here in this spot, a grade 1 winner. Outside of Proxy, do you think there's someone who's a real threat to him?
It's tough. I mean, Proxy has all the back class. I mean, he's going to be every bit of 1 to 5, 2 to 5, based on his past credentials.
Sure.
He is a horse that I have been on Proxy for a while. He's that horse that, let's say that I've bet him 5 out of the 6 his last races. He lost the 5 that I bet on him, and he won the 6. Yeah. He's like one of those horses.
Oh yeah, we all have him.
He runs in spots a little bit, like he needs to be on the outside. He's one of those horses, like he'll be under a drive at the half-mile pole, dropping back, and then you'll just assume that he's not going to run his race that day, and then he'll come flying at the end to get beat a nose. So he's kind of a weird horse. He's a horse at 2 to 5 that. This is a race that I might try to beat him in, just based on, he kind of runs in spots, and he doesn't give you his best 24/7. But then you look through the field and you're kind of like, who am I going to beat him with? Right. And there's not really a horse that jumps off the page. The one thing I would say is Proxy is one of many closers in here. I don't see like a confirmed speed horse. I'd probably say the horse to Proxy's outside, Wayland Springs, is probably the lone speed in this race. He won he won an allowance last time out, so he's never been in a stakes going 2 turns. He ran in the Chick Lang, a sprint race, last year, so he definitely does not class up to Proxy. He would be the only horse that I would maybe take a shot and just really hope to get lucky that he's left alone on the lead. Proxy decides that, hey, I'm not going to run my A race today, but Proxy is going to be awfully tough at a very, very short price.
For our listeners around the country who are tuning in to check out the Haskell this weekend, in the past performances, a couple of horses here ran a mile at Monmouth. Is that 1 turn or is that 2 turns over the track at Monmouth?
2 turns. So we don't run many flat mile races. Usually they're a mile and 70 yards, but a mile is 2 turns, and it's literally start at the finish line, end at the finish line, and it is a pretty short run to the first turn. That's kind of why we run a lot of mile and 70-yard races, just to give a little more room to the first turn. But a mile is 2 turns at Monmouth.
The other horse that was not mentioned there that was in that race was Anti-Gravity, the one horse here for Dan Ward and Nick Juarez. Will be coming out of the one hole there. Dan, Dan, good Lord. I host with a guy named Dan for 10 hours a week in the mornings, and so that's why I called TK Dan for no reason at all. TK, outside of Proxy, you get to be a Hall of Famer if you're Dan, to be fair. Do you 8 times? He's an 8-time Hall. I work with an 8-time Hall of Famer.
I know.
What do you even do with that? Anyways,
I don't know.
And he's nice. Whatever. Get out of here.
I know.
Proxy, man, class. We have a staying classical class on this show. Boy, he seems like the class here.
Totally. I think Brian nailed it spot on this race. But like Brian said, I'd have a hard time betting this horse 2 to 5. I'm going to try to beat it here. And the one horse I'm going to try to beat it with is Calibrate. Is the horse that I'm gonna probably throw. It's another horse coming. You can make a case that it's dropping down in class as well a little bit here. So and ran a decent run in the Brooklyn. So I think you can make a case for it possibly. How's that?
There you go. Calibrate's the.
Was that definitive or what? Was that
Jamie Ness, who you know very well from the Maryland circuit, of course? Is training there, and so Calibrate would be there. Man, I think you lean on Proxy in this spot. I think Godolphin very rarely misses with these kinds of horses. Michael Stidham sends him out here. Proxy made me look, Brian, you were talking about when you bet him. He made me look really smart in the Clark last fall, so I'm a little worried I'm biased about me having said, no, the layoff really doesn't bother me about him and the Clark, and then he runs out there and he runs a great race. Of course, that we were lucky to be at Churchill Downs. So we'll go on to the next race here, which of course is the Wolf Hill. And the Wolf Hill is a 5.5 furlong turf sprint. It's over 1 1/3 turns there at Monmouth, who has a pretzel of a turf course there. It's very cool. It's for 3 and up. It's $100,000 here. It's a listed stakes. And TK, I'll go to you here first. A little bit. I think a couple more horses we could bet in this one than the last race.
100%. I personally am gonna. If you put a gun to my head and said you got to pull the trigger and you're only going to get picked one, I'm going to pick Nothing Better as my one horse to pull the trigger on. But this is probably a race. First of all, it's a turf sprint. There's nothing better in the world than a turf sprint. We should have 3 turf sprints every card. If I was king of the world, we'd have 3 turf sprints every card, and you could do it right because you just move it around. You're not even working the same part of the track. You could get creative here and make it work. Anyway,
change the finish line. Let's go, people.
Yeah, exactly. I digress. Yeah. So, but I think you could make a case for at least 4 or 5 horses here. And when you have that situation, once again, if you're playing a horizontal and you don't feel really strongly about one of them, this is a race that I'm probably going to spread. And I'm probably going to be looking 3 or 4 or 5 horses here with a couple singles somewhere else.
Nothing Better dropping out of the grade 1 Japer at Belmont last time out is the 7 horse here for the Duarte barn. Louis Sias picks up the mount here, which I wrote in my notes. I have Nothing Better in the second spot here, Brian. I think the addition of Louis Sias is a major positive here. Horse does have 5 wins in the last 10 starts, 4 of 8 lifetime at Monmouth Park, so likes the course. Brian, for you, you've worked there for a while. You're a Jersey kid. Do you look at how horses have performed over that turf course at Monmouth? Does that matter to you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I do that at any track, really. If a horse is, 3 for 30 and all 3 of those wins, and he's 3 for 3 at a track, that means something. So Nothing Better definitely is a Monmouth Park. There's a few horses in here that love Monmouth Park. Midday Image, the 2 is 3 for 8 at Monmouth. Belgrano, the 4 loves Monmouth, 8 out of 12 in the exacta, and Nothing Better, 4 for 8. Yes, I do, factor that in for sure.
I like 4 Harp here, the 9 for sure. I have him slightly ahead of Nothing Better in this spot, 9-7 on top for me. I think the addition of Paco Lopez is a major positive. Paco knows the course as well as any jockey, frankly, in the country right now. That layoff of the course, that layout there where there's kind of an indent coming into the track and then you take a slight left to get onto the main turf course. I think that once in a while for horses that aren't used to the track, and we don't have too many of them here, that could set up for a closer if there's a little bit too much speed on the front. Eamon, the 1 horse here, is 10-1. I'm going to include that horse here coming out of a 5 furlong handicap at Gulfstream Park. I think that the sub 57 5 furlongs is a winning time, even in this group. So if it gets too hectic up front, Joel Rosario in the mount there might be able to carve out a trip for this horse. So that one hole hurts less, I think, for this horse long term. I mentioned Midday Image in my notes. Is Whitty going to win again? Is really my question here. Is that 5 horse going to be something that is worth including here? I have 6 horses in this field included in my ticket: 9, 7, 1, 2, 4, and 5. But I think you can make a lot of cases for a lot of different horses. But I'm interested to see if it gets so out of control up front that maybe a horse like Eamon gets to the front and takes over in this one. We go to the next race. It is the Grade 3 Molly Pitcher. By the way, if people are wondering, yes, the purses are massive. The last winners of the Monmouth Cup are the following horses: Highly Motivated, Dr. Post, Global Campaign, War Story are the last 4 winners of this race. It's a very serious race. Brian, can you name the last horse to win it 2 years in a row?
No.
Okay, it was Braidster in 15 and 16 for Eddie Keneally, and 2 different jockeys there, Corey Lannery and Joe Bravo as well. So an interesting old Jersey Joe there. How about that? But we do go to the 10th race, which is the Molly Pitcher, another one of these races where you've heard of the winners. It's a $500,000 race, fillies and mares, a mile and a 16th. A little surprising it's a Grade 3 to me because of who shows up in this one. We get some serious high-level class in this one in search results coming in for Chad Brown. Obviously, a daughter of Flatter, Lay Davida, coming out of that win in Cleveland at Thistledown in the Lady Jacqueline. We get a horse that came out of that very productive Allaire DuPont at Pimlico. A couple back, Interstate Daydream came back, ran second in the Indiana Oaks, and then we get Misty Vale coming back running in that Lady Jacqueline. But of course, Lay Davida, or Misty Vale, runs second in that, comes back here. Lay Davida comes back, wins in the Lady Jacqueline. Very productive race there. TK again, class going class. A little hard to look past search results. I'm interested in a couple of newish shooters here. I think Loved is an interesting horse because she breaks her maiden as a 4-year-old at Keeneland, goes to Churchill, wins in an allowance race, goes to Ellis in the slop, wins by 685 lengths, which is really impressive. So I'm interested to see if we're going to go outside of search results. I might try one of the newer shooters. She comes up as one of them. And then the 3 horse in this race is distinctly possible. That's a Brown Sias combo. If I had to lean on one, I would go more with the 6 horse there in Loved. Where would you land, TK?
It's so funny you mentioned Loved because I actually watched a bunch of I watched the replays, not a bunch because you don't have a bunch, but I watched the replays today
right.
of the last couple races, and there's something about that horse that it kind of explodes when it hits the ground, right? Kind of, and I honestly, Tyler stays on here, so, and is there anybody training better than Brendan Walsh right now? He's winning all over the place. So, I think it's a really interesting because I think what you're going to get, I think the Chad Brown effect here is going to get even money bet on it. You're going to get even. It's going to go 4 to 5 to even money or somewhere in that range.
On search results, yep.
And that's what you're going to see on search results. So once again, if in these situations, maybe that's the way it's going to go. But as a gambler, you should be looking for value somewhere here, and making a case for Love is a case that I can make. Is really the story.
Brian, we also see Lay Davida. Like I mentioned, she's coming out of this. Falconet is another horse that ran in that DuPont. I think Pletcher had ideas for her earlier in the year. Ran her at a bunch of those listed stakes. We find her back in a Grade 3 here. A horse like Falconet, a horse like Misty Vale, or boy, are you going to lean on that class and someone like Search Results?
No, I'm leaning on the 2 that you said. I'm a huge Search Results fan. I always have been. She tries hard every time, and she just falls so short to either a champion like Latruska or finds the distance just a little too far. I think that's why Chad Brown is here with her. He brought her here last year. I think like a mile and a 16th around 2 turns is absolutely perfect for her. And there's not many, all the big races in New York and Breeders' Cup, they're a mile and an 1/8, which is probably like 50 yards too far for her. So I think this is his kind of, race of get her a kind of a relatively, a more easy race than those Grade 1 Bears are in New York at her perfect distance. And then, bring her back in the personal ensign at the longer distance and just have her run her eyeballs out. And she just, whether it's Clairiere or Malathot or Latruska, like I said, she just runs some unbelievable races and finished 2nd and 3rd. So I'm a huge fan of hers. She's going to take a lot of beating. And the only horse I think can beat her is Love, just because she's an unknown. She's never run in stakes company, but as you said, she's just trouncing horses that she's been facing. And to me, she's the only speed horse in the race as well.
Yeah.
So even though she doesn't class up to search results, she might have on paper so far, she might have a pace advantage, and she could be anything. She's slowly but surely improving.
I think that's the key, Brian, is that with Love is that we don't know. Nobody really knows, right? I mean, she may be the class. She just started later, right? And this could be the coming out party or something, here. So, if I'm going to look for value, I'm going to try to pick that, because a lot of the other ones, if you try to make value, you're stretching, right? I mean, you're really stretching to make a case for some of the others in this particular race.
Last 5 trainers to win this race: Brown, Pletcher, Mott, Asmussen, and Motion. You may have heard of them. Past winners include Search Results, Horologist, Midnight Bizu. How this is a grade 3, I don't know, but here we are. Search Results, of course, the winner last year, re-entered here with Chad Brown in this one. And it would be nice if Loved won here. Godolphin's such a mom and pop operation. You would just feel really good for. Okay, I almost got it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so the United Nations is the next race. It's grade 1. So this one's a grade 1 and should be a grade 2, and the Molly Pitcher's a grade 3 and should be a grade 2. Don't listen to me, Brian. $600,000 here. 3 and up, going to 1 3/8. We're going. The nice neat 11 furlongs there, 3 turns at Monmouth. One of my very favorite races of the entire calendar year here in North America. We see the old dog in Red Knight, one of my favorite turf horses, frankly, since I've started watching horse racing. I really love that horse. We have 2 horses in here, Brian, that I'm a little concerned were entered just because of their names.
Okay.
Foreign relations in the United Nations, I'm just saying.
Yep.
And Planetario in the United Nations. I'm just saying geography names and space names, it's a little much, but I'm going to allow it. I happen to think that both of those horses actually have a shot here. Where did you land, Brian?
Well, if you read the very, very fine print of the, the rules of the race, the descriptions of the race, it does say that there's a significant discount both in weights and entry fee if the name of your horse does have something to do with the United Nations. So maybe that could be. But I'm with you. I love the United Nations. It's one of my favorite races of the year. It used to be. I'd say this is probably the 5th or 6th year, maybe even more, that it's been run on Haskell. They used to have its own separate day.
Yeah,
there used to be, United Nations Day, and that was one of my favorite days of the year. But now to be able to bet a UN Haskell double is a very cool thing. This is a spectacular running, in my opinion. There are many horses that can win this race. I'm going to focus in on Catnip, Planetario. I'm with you. I actually have been a big Red Knight fan for a long time. The horse that I'm using I don't have the morning line here, but I'm hoping for large odds is Yamato.
15-1. Yeah.
He's a horse that he was claimed. What is that? 3 races ago by Mike Maker. He used to be trained by Marat Samkal. He only has a few horses. A Breeders' Cup winning trainer. Does a very good job. Was running in like starter allowance races, an allowance race here or there. And for some reason, just in one of those races, he caught my eye, so I followed him in like the lower level. He ran at Kentucky Downs, I think, a few times and won like going long at Kentucky Downs. So the day that I saw Mike Maker claimed him, and obviously Mike Maker is just known for claiming horses, and boom, they win a grade 1 and a 1.5 miles in their next race. I kind of earmarked in the back of my mind, I said, this horse is going to win like that 1.5 mile race at Kentucky Downs or some big race. So maybe it's the UN. He probably would not be my top pick. As you said earlier, if you put a gun to my head, probably Catnip is my top pick.
Okay.
But Yamato is absolutely on the ticket. And I like that Saez is aboard here. Back in the days when he was trained by Marat Sankal and I first started, following this horse, Luis Saez rode him all the time. You could only see one of those races in his PPs, but if you had, all of his lifetime starts, I'm going to say Saez has ridden him 5-6 times. So to be reunited, I think is an interesting little price play there. But Catnip ran incredibly well last time in the prep race. Was sitting close, had traffic, basically dropped back to last, and still came on. He's an improving horse too. That's 2 for 2 at Monmouth. Going back to the topic we talked about earlier, horses for courses. So I think Catnip's going to be the top pick. But Planetario, Yamato have to be on the tickets for me.
Yamato, Louis Saez in the Irons, TK, 6 races at Monmouth this year. 3 wins in 2 seconds. Not bad on 6 races there. So obviously getting good mounts and doing a good job with them. My guy, Red Knight, say something nice about Red Knight.
I think Red Knight has every chance to win this race, but I always am worried about singling a horse that comes from the clouds in a race like this.
Absolutely, yes.
And that's the problem, because anything could happen, right? Horse gets in the way in front of it, slows momentum, and it all falls apart. And we, unless a miracle or a lightning strikes, or somebody comes down with tablets from the mountain or something, it's going to be that's what's going to happen here, right? And so I struggle to single a horse in a horizontal play that runs like that in a race. So especially when you're, once again, probably going to be short odds here. So a lot of money is going to flow in horizontal bets to that horse. I'm like Brian. I like Catnip. If you put a gun to my head and had to pick something on top, I'm picking Catnip. But I think you can. This is another one where I'm going wide and trying to get a big price here when all the money's flowing to Red Knight.
There you go. Well, no Chad Brown horse in this race. He won it the last 2 years with Adamo last year, Tripivon the year before, Aquaphobia the year before that for Mike Maker. And then Hunter O'Reilly won the race in 2019. Paco Lopez aboard. Flavian Pratt has won the last 2 as the jockey. I'm a huge fan of Red Knight. I'm very open about that on the show here. Man, Planetario is an interesting horse that did love the distance in the San Juan Capistrano last time at Santa Anita. First win in the U.S. after 8 starts in Brazil. So I'm interested to see if trainer Richard Mandel sort of has the feet under this horse since that race. I don't think that Richard ships that horse for no reason here. And so I am going to use that horse. I'm really interested in Therapist here, who ran a really, really good race last time at Ellis Park over 1.25 miles. Needed a little bit more distance, and I have great news. That horse is going to get a little bit more distance here. And so interested to see that horse. Didn't get it done in the Louisville. That was a surprisingly blanketish finish for 10 horses there. I think all of them were within 4 or 5 lengths here at Churchill Downs on Preakness weekend. And that Louisville has come back to show some pretty good horses, and that's why I think Foreign Relations has a real shot here. Declan Cannon, by the way, too, is out of his mind right now. That percentage has gone from somewhere in the 11-12 range to 15 in just the last couple of weeks overall for him, and so he's having a great time the last couple of weeks as well. So I think I'm with you. Wide open race. If you did want to lean on Red Knight, you needed a reason. He is an every other type, and this is the every other race. All right, so let's get into it, guys. The big race of the day that isn't called the United Nations is the Haskell. It's 1 1/8. This is the Jersey Derby, even though they have a Jersey Derby. It's a 1 1/8. Like I mentioned, 3-year-olds, of course, $1 million here. There is a late pick 3 starting here if you're out of all your tickets and you wanted to play the last 2 races afterward. Obviously, there are 2 getaway races here. Brian, what kind of crowd, numbers-wise, do you guys expect on a Haskell day?
I would say anywhere, so in a given year, anywhere between 25,000 and 60,000 was the highest with American Pharaoh there. So if we had the worst Haskell field of all time, I would say, and horrible weather, I would say we would have 25,000 people. It's still a party. It's still the biggest event of the year. People are still going to come out. What really drives and pushes the attendance over the top is the horses we get in the Haskell. And thankfully, to have the Kentucky Derby winner as we do this year, that again, I think I used this line last time, but I run the marketing department at the track. No one is going to sell more tickets than being able to say the Kentucky Derby winner is coming to run in the Haskell. So that kind of didn't help do my job for me. So I would say we should be in the 35 to 40,000 person range this weekend. It's supposed to be good weather, knock on wood. So
yeah, I saw that.
Should be a good time for everyone.
There you go. Well, Brian, I'll let you pick your Haskell winner, at least a couple that you would end your sequence with. I have to say, when we get to this part of the season and we are traveling the country for the derbies, this is the exact field that I want. I want the Derby winner. I want a horse like Papatrice who's shown it on the big stages that he belongs in those groups, even if he looks a little distracted, he's a little immature. Extra Añejo, we saw him in October at Keeneland, and oh man, all of our eyes all lit up. And then of course he had to go to the bench and not run until Derby weekend. Unfortunately, you get the Baffert shipper and Arabian Night, $2.3 million purchase. I got to say, man, this is exactly what I want in a Haskell TK.
100%, my friend. 100%.
And you get Go Rocket Ride, who's an absolute wild card. You get Salute the Stars, who won the prep race coming in, the Pegasus, last month. Brian, go ahead, man. Who you got here, man?
Yeah, to your point, this is one of my favorite Haskell fields in a very long time. We've had a lot of good Haskells. Not a lot of times, but sometimes we get the overwhelming superstar, the Rachel Alexandra, who, with all due respect, couldn't lose. American Pharaoh couldn't lose. Big Brown couldn't lose. So it's kind of that battle between a huge crowd comes out to see Rachel Alexandra, so that's great for on site. But in terms of a betting race, it's who's going to finish second. This race, who's going to, you could ask, it's an 8-horse field. You could ask, 6 different people who's going to win, and they can give you 6 different horses. This is a phenomenal race, as you said. At this point, so we obviously have the Kentucky Derby winner, Mage. Their camp has been pretty honest and outspoken that this is a prep for the Travers.
Yep.
Doesn't mean he can't win the Haskell, obviously. He's a Kentucky Derby winner and should be respected, but I think this is a stepping stone to their main goal, which is the Travers. So might be an opportunity to play against. Tappet Trice, like you said, is a horse that looks like he should just be dominating these races, and for whatever reason didn't run great in the Derby, and then finished third with his best buyer in the Belmont. But that race should have suited him in terms of the distance. Yep. So the only reason to like Tappet Trice is for my own opposite of selfishness. I've liked him all along. He was my Derby pick. He's my Belmont pick. He's not on any ticket for me in the Haskell, so just for that reason, he'll probably win.
Yeah. The needless besmirchment of Tappet Trice begins on Thursday. There it is.
Exactly. I think Extra Anejo is going to be my top pick. I'm going to use them with Go Rocket Ride and Salute the Stars.
Nice.
And just saying that out loud, you have to pause, because by saying that out loud, that means that Arabian Night, trained by Bob Baffert, who's won this race 9 times, who has an undefeated horse, is at best like my 4th pick, which how is that possible? But that shows how deep the field is. My opinion this year with the 3-year-olds is I think this isn't to say that they're not any good, but I think this is a year that they're going to take turns beating each other. Like Mage won, we saw 3 different horses win 3 different Triple Crown races. So one of the new faces to me is the horse that I'm interested in. Arabian Night is going to be on, I'm not letting Bob Baffert win his 10th Haskell and beat me. So if that horse wins, I'm going to have something. But I think Extra Anejo, I saw him today on the backside. He is a massive, massive animal.
Yeah, he is.
He's building his
He looks
way
like
up
Dad.
to this.
Yeah.
His last race was quite visually impressive. The burst of speed that he had, his connections are talking about him with a lot of confidence. I think he's going to be the top pick. But Go Rocket Ride, your point with Planetary in the last race, right. Dick Mandela is not just coming for a vacation on the Jersey Shore. He's pointed this horse to the Haskell for 2 months. I think this horse is going to run well. And Salute the Stars is a horse that I think is going to get overlooked a little bit. He won the Pegasus. We talked about that race last time. He's a little quirky too. He threw his head around in his last race. He was very rank early, but he still came flying late to run down Kingsbarns. I think he has a shot at a big price here as well.
There you go. Well, TK, is there any chance that the Haskell mimics the Preakness and Johnny Velasquez is on the early pace and just rocks everybody to sleep, and we just get Arabian Night out front and he stays out front?
No.
How about that? Let's go.
I got an ice cold exacta of Extra Anejo and Salute the Stars. I echoing a little bit of what Brian said.
Wow.
We ran in the Haskell last year, and and I will tell you, this field in this Haskell is way better than the field we ran against last year. Way better, top to bottom. You can make a case for every single horse in this race. There's no horse that you could just cross out and say there's no chance. And you definitely had that with the Haskell last year. But in this, I like Extra Anejo. And when you have those situations, I'm looking for some value once again. I'm looking because I think a lot of the money's going to gravitate into a couple different places. Money's going to gravitate to Mage. money's going to gravitate to Arabian Night. That's the way it goes, right?
Yep.
So
Derby winner and Baffert, they're going to get money. That's exactly right.
And so when you have a situation where any of the horses you believe as a handicapper, you can make a case for any of the horses, narrow it down and leave them out is kind of one of my logic. So I'm going to have just those two on my pick 5. That's all I'm going to have out of this race. And I'm heavy on an extra anejo because I like it spicy.
I was going to ask, you're with Wasabi. Do you enjoy Wasabi?
I do. The name came because the big sushi fan. That's 20 some years ago when I landed the name. So, but yeah.
Brian, do you enjoy either spicy food or sushi or both?
Both. I'm a big spice. I've always liked.
Okay.
I am a big fisherman, so I go fishing all the time. So
Okay,
it actually took me. I've only eaten sushi probably the last, let's say, 6 or 7 years. I had a mental block with raw fish as someone who goes fishing all the time, and
it's not bait. Yeah.
It took me a long time to get over that.
Yeah.
But yeah, now sushi, poke bowls, I'm in.
Oh, there it is.
It's
love
delicious.
it. All right, well, good. All right, well, I won't ask if you're sake people. That's really not fair. But we'll get out of here on that. Brian, we talked about the CCA Oaks earlier. I'm totally putting you on the spot. Do you have a pick in that race? If you don't, totally understand. You work at Monmouth, not at a different place.
I absolutely would have one. If it was any other week but Haskell week, I would know who was in the field. Other than the horses that you mentioned that I may or may not even remember now, I don't know who's in the race.
There you go. I'll give you 3 horses. You tell me who wins. Wet Paint, Gambling Girl. Who's your filly?
Not Wet Paint. I feel like she's been disappointed if memory serves. I know, she was the favorite in the Oaks if memory serves, and I think she's lost 2 in a row. Without having the PPs in front of me, I'm going to go with Who's Your Filly. I feel like she won her first couple races and then lost a few, but she bounced back. She won last time, right? Did she beat Wet Paint last time? Were they in the same race?
That's a great question.
Now I'm putting you on the spot.
She beat her by 3.5 lengths. Yes.
Right, so I'm going to go with her. Maybe she had a little lull sometime early in the year, but maybe she's back to her top form and keep the winning ways going.
We watched her here, man, in the fall as a 2-year-old. She was unbelievable. I as far as 2-year-olds go, she's as good as I've seen maybe ever. I mean, she was unbelievable last year. Go ahead, TK. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think Brian's better without the PPs than we are with the PPs. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Thanks for saying that out loud on my podcast. I appreciate that. But he's Brian Skirka. Where should people? Is there something, that is a Monmouth tradition that I can replicate at home? So, for example, in Louisville when it's Derby Day, even if you're not at the track and you're just at a grocery store in town, or you're popping to the corner to pick up a 6-pack or something, there's a guy in a bow tie, there's a woman in a hat, right? Because they're on their way to a party or whatever. If I wanted to do Haskell at home, which by the way you should be marketing and you're welcome.
We did during COVID. That's exactly what we did. Haskell at home.
You should do it anyway for guys like me who are watching the Haskell and can't just go to Jersey because, like TK, I have 4 kids, but none of them have walked across the stage yet for graduation. What should I be doing at home? Is there a drink of the Haskell, anything like that?
There is. We have a drink called the Summer Wind. Now you're going to have to make me remember what's in it. It's vodka, triple sec, maybe like Sprite, something like that. But I would say it's very similar. This is our Kentucky Derby. So the same bow ties, the same hats that you guys wear to the Kentucky Derby, same thing. And then it doesn't have to be the Summer Wind, but a Haskell tradition is drinking heavily. So whatever your booze of choice is, it doesn't have to be a mint julep. It can be a beer, whatever. Yeah. If you're doing that, you're doing what people are doing at Haskell Day. So you're part of the crew as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there you go. Well, he's Brian Skirka. He is with Monmouth Park. We thank him for hanging out today. What's the website? Where can people go just to kind of get the lay of the land with Monmouth?
Yeah, monmouthpark.com. We have a couple Haskell pages with everything that you'll need, everything from, bios on the 8 horses that are in the field to, if you're coming day of, all the event information where you can buy your tickets, dining options, pretty much anything you need is at monmouthpark.com.
There you go. And I was on the site, again, on the spot. Is there a contest online at all that's going on this year that people can get involved in?
There is. So we have 2 different contests actually on Haskell Day. So we have a paid, live money, quote unquote actual handicapping contest. That's $1,000 to enter. Played through TVG and Express Bet. They can contact me. Anyone who's interested in signing up, bskirka@monmouthpark.com. But then a cool kind of tradition that we do every year on Haskell Day is we do a free online handicapping contest. So it's kind of pick and pray every race on Haskell Day. So if you go in, you have to pick one horse in each of the 14 races on Monmouth Day. You get the mythical payouts for $2 across the board. And then whoever has the most money at the end of the day after the 14 races, we do cash prizes to the top 3. Completely free to enter.
That's great.
I'm pretty sure the website is thehaskellgame.com.
Cool.
It might just be haskellgame.com, but I think there's a the there. But all of that information is at monmouthpark.com too. You just have to be signed up by the first race on Haskell Day, but it's all free to enter. So you might as well take a free roll. You're handicapping the races anyway, so you might as well take a shot.
There you go. Cyberknife, Mandaloon, Authentic, Maximum Security, Good Magic, Gervin, Exaggerator, American Pharaoh, and Bayern, the last winners of this race. When you talk about grade ones, that's a grade 1 list. Brian, really appreciate the time, man. When's the last time next time we're gonna bother you? Do you have any idea?
Whenever you want.
Oh,
okay. We got a couple graded stakes left the remaining of the year. So just reach out, and even if it's not about racing, we can talk about geography or something, whatever.
Oh, there you go. Little New Jersey talk on a Thursday. Why not? All right.
There you go.
Thank you, Brian. We'll see you next time, buddy.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
All right. See you, man.
See you.
All right, TK. All right. So we've gone through the Haskell card. I love that they have the same takeout for pick 4s as they do pick 5s. I think that is, awesome. for anyone who, really wants to, either take a stand with that pick 4, or, if you get bounced from that pick 5, you could play the pick 4 and not have, honestly, at a lot of places like 9-10% higher to play maybe sometimes double the takeout rate to play the pick 4. If you get bounced with the pick 5, I think that's probably why they do it. But it's nice to have those options. So, how many pick 5s will you play at Monmouth on a day like Haskell?
Usually my go-to number is 2, sometimes 3. I'm not one of those guys that does like 5. I'm usually a 2 for a big day like that, and if I'm actively handicapping, right? So but I don't tend to be. I usually get my beliefs, and my big strategy, I've hit 268 pick 5s since the beginning of 2020. That's my number. And what I usually look for is I look at a sequence and I look who is the most likely heavy favorite that I don't like. And then that's where I start from, and I build the ticket around that, and trying to find some wacky ass price. And so and that's kind of how it plays out. But what I find myself, and it's a mental thing, because I know some really great handicappers and great bettors who do multiple on a horizontal, many multiples, 4 or 5. I always just believe I got a belief. What am I going to do? Root against myself? It's like, so I just can't get past that mental state. So I just don't. So
there you go. All right. Well, that's like the guys who have like 3 fantasy teams and they're like playing against their own guys. And I'm like, how do you do that, bro? Like, I can't do that stuff. Yeah,
I don't know. First of all, who's got the time? Who's got time to do 12 different fantasy leagues?
I don't.
So.
I'm with you, brother. All right. Well, he's TK Kuegler. You can find them online. Hey, what is I know you're at TK Kuegler on Twitter. What's a good spot for Wasabi?
Yeah, wasabistables.com is the easiest way to find us and check out what we're doing.
How often do people sign up with you guys?
About 3 a day.
You have 1,000 people sign up a year?
Yeah.
How about that? How about that, producer Zach? You like that? How about that? Oh, I love that.
All I've been waiting for this whole time is like, TK, what paperwork do I need to sign to join the ownership group?
Well, the problem is
that's the beauty of having a software guy build a website. Build a
No, TK, I want you to hold me by the hand. I want you to sit next to me and cuddle while I sign up. Okay.
All the time. And you're almost my type. I would have to tell you that you're almost my type.
Yes, I told you, Louie. I told you.
You did tell me. That's a blind spot for me. That's what that is. Oh, all right, well, he's TK Kuegler. He's with Wasabi Stables. We thank him for being part of our horse racing 101 segment with the folks at the Maryland Thoroughbred. Breeders Association. They're hanging out with us all the way through Breeders' Cup this year, which is awesome. We're going to be announcing a new partnership tomorrow with a local group, Honest and Louie, on ESPN 680. So if you're interested, our guy Kevin Kilroy dropping by tomorrow. We'll be talking Haskell, Oaks, and then every Saturday we'll be picking one race that we really like at a Kentucky track. Ellis Park, of course, this weekend, and so we'll be doing that as well. TK, don't be a stranger, my friend. We'll have you back soon, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, Zach, let's play the music
and
here. And
just for the advertisement for Haskell and Louie, you can find that by saying ESPN Louisville into any of your smart devices.
Yeah, that's exactly right. 10 to noon Eastern every day, Monday through Friday. You can listen to me talk about college basketball, which is its own adventure. How about that? Zach, go ahead and play that music. We'll get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on a Thursday here on the